So folks, we're going to explore this kind of issue of intent and the significance of the issue of intent for an hour. And we're going to do this by just starting off with a question of, I mean, most of you actually are working, aren't you? The students who you're working, I suppose. So why do you do that? Why do you work? Fire off the hip, help me create a panel. Help me fill this box.
Support the family financially.
Why do you support the family? Why else?
It's kind of social necessity.
Social necessity. Why else?
Passionate about what I do.
I'm passionate about it. I'm smoldering with passion.
To get better at doing what you do, improvement.
To be of service to other people.
I mean, you surely can't be done yet. Why do you work, Max?
So that one day I can make a difference to the world.
Intellectual stimulation.
Sharing knowledge and skills.
To be more fully myself.
Is career important at all to anyone? Sure. Just going to put that down. Squeeze this thing right there. So you've already gone dry. If you're a cow, I'd have to punch the other line.
To experience, play.
Play.
Yeah, I work to play.
Okay. You can see as we were talking, folks, this kind of, I've been putting what you've been saying into categories. And I think you can tease 4 categories out of this. It sort of cuts like that in this. The first category really has to do with security. So we say, I go to work in order to earn a living for my family. I go to work, to pay the bond or to get some assets or whatever. Issues relating to security. The second theme is really, so be myself, to become myself, to become more of myself, a sense of play, a sense of passion, to get better at what I do, for intellectual stimulation. What do you think that's all about? If you want to put one word that would hold that category, what would the word be?
Fulfillment.
Fulfillment. I think that's right. Now, I had to squeeze you a little bit to get this category, the next one, and the reason why is that it's not very politically correct. Because it's really about a sense of significance. And Although, and because we kind of intuitively avoid this, nobody wants to be seen to be arrogant that you want to become somebody. I think it does violence to the truth not to recognize that we have that requirement. I mean, I've yet to find a person who's completely comfortable with the idea of dying a nobody. Everyone wants to be somebody. So Max, if you think about this issue of making a difference, you can actually see that in one of two ways. I want to leave a legacy, which is like I want to be significant, or I want to make the world a better place. So it has that ambivalence to it. If you choose to see it through the lens of significance, then it's a competitive thing. It's basically about becoming better than other people, kind of rising up in the hierarchy, having a career, becoming more and more important in the world. So in that sense, this thing is about power. But power from the point of view of having be hierarchically more senior than other people. Being a recognized person, significant person. This last theme, is kind of the opposite. Because where this is sort of competitive in character, the feel of this is a lot more collaborative. It's kind of making the world a better place. So you could see making a difference through that lens, for example, or to share my knowledge, or because it's a social necessity. Being of service to others, making a difference, but making a difference from the point of view of making the world better. So this is really about harmony. And what I mean by harmony is that the spirit of that category is a collaborative spirit. It's about making the world a better place. So I mean, we could be 500 people in the room, ask the same question. I could have asked you to write it down. I didn't because it was a bit short on time, but you only ever get these four categories: security, fulfillment, power, and harmony. And just think about that. Is there anything that you said or that you thought about that you couldn't fit into one of those four boxes? I mean, in other words, do we need a fifth box? It's kind of adequate, huh? And you go to work to get that stuff. But that's what you said. Yes.
So what about like expectations? Like what if you work, not because you want to, but because society expects you to, when you'd really rather just go off somewhere and live in the woods?
I know exactly what you mean. Yes.
Like that's me.
I would put it in this because it's about having to be significant in the eyes of others. Society's expectation of me.
Okay, and how
Right.
about
Yeah. Duty would come over here. It's about, I have to make a contribution to the world. Is that satisfying? I mean, do you see that? Okay. So, folks, to make the next point, I need you to stand up. Don't sit down, stand up. And it's going to be a bit interesting in this room to do this without getting people injured. So what you need to do, so there's a couple of rules. The first thing is you need to get your torso orientated directly towards me. So you're looking at me square on, wherever you're standing. And you need to be able to do this without kind of injuring somebody else. So you might need to, at the back, stagger yourself a little bit so you can do this without sort of causing harm. You do that? Now flap very hard and see the room fly away. No. Take both of your index fingers and point them at me like this, and crook them. And move them further and further back until they get to the limit of your peripheral vision. And experiment with that point. In fact, wiggle your fingers because we see movement in our peripheral vision. So move it forward and back until you get to the point where your fingers are just about to disappear. So you can just see them. You got that point? Very good. Now, keeping your hands at that limit, at the limit of your peripheral vision, tickle the boundary so that the world will giggle. Tickle the boundary, all the way at the limit of your peripheral vision, going all the way up to the top. Very good. Come back down, tickle the boundary at the limit of your peripheral vision, going all the way down, down. It's very hypnotic, of course. This is how they make, what do they call them, Maturation candidate, you know what they do? Never mind. Tickle the boundary going all the way up. Just once more, because I need you to understand what I'm trying to describe. Tickle that back all the way up. Very good, very good. Come back down, tickle that boundary. There you go. Very good. You can follow instructions. Please take a seat. What you've just done is you've described the boundary at the limit of your peripheral vision. That makes sense? One would say, well, so what? But I mean, this is an incredibly important place. All Sufism is based on this distinction. Because this boundary that you describe operates like a window frame, which is why it's referred to as the window of perception. Because where would anything be that you could see with regard to the boundary you've just described? In front of you, contained within that boundary, which is why it makes sense to refer to that boundary as the window of perception, because it literally operates like a window frame that contains what you perceive. This window is the fundamental dividing line that your entire life gets played or forgets, because it's the difference between two completely different realms. First of all, there's that which you can see, and we've already described it as that which is contained within this boundary and kind of presented in front of you, which is why that which is referred to as the outward, because it's the world out there, the perceived, if you like, the seen. Where are you? Where's the perceiver with regard to the boundary you've just described? Where's the seer? Well, it is certainly behind. I mean, yeah, you can't see that.
Yeah.
So you need to be behind the sea, not looking at the looker. You know what I mean? You need to be the looker. So if you're the looker, then you're kind of behind this window. Am I right? Sort of looking in. So this boundary is the dividing line between two worlds: the seen and the seer, the perceived and the perceiver, or the outward and the inward. Now, for most people, where's your place of work? In the outward or in the inward? When you go to work, how do you go there? Do you go sit in a lotus position in the corner of your bedroom and make interesting sound? You go there. I mean, by definition, now, why do you go to work? Your workplace is over there. You actually have to get into a train there. So in other words, and why are you going there, by the way? Why are you going there is to achieve these things. In other words, all of us have this idea that these things are the product of endeavor committed to the outward, over there. Where would you place your intent as a variable? In the outward or in the inward?
Inward.
Out.
Your intent sits where? This side of the window of perception or that side of the window of perception? It sits with you, it sits this side of the window of perception. If I can demonstrate to you that every one of these four things are the product of how your intent operates, maybe you'll conclude you're working in dramatically the wrong place. I'm like, seriously, it'll never work? You know, it's kind of, don't scratch your leg to get to the itch on your head, it's not going to work, kind of thing. Could have used a different part of their mind. Right. So let me demonstrate why that's the case. If one has a look at how intent works, I mean, if that's me, clearly, obviously I was a lot younger then because I'm not nearly as fat as I am now. So that's myself. Where's everything else? If that's the self, where's everything else? Where's the other? All around you. You can kind of graphically describe the other as that which encapsulates the self. Now, folks, if you examine the architecture of intent, what becomes apparent is that in any situation that you deal with, you can either construct your intent on what you're trying to get from the other, or you can construct your intent on what you can get. These two variables work differently. If that's me and that's the world, if I get something from the other, the thing that I'm getting moves from where to where?
From the other to
From other to self. So kind of, that's the direction of getting, okay? And if I give something, now surely, in absolutely every situation that you're in, you can choose to construct your engagement with that situation on this or on this. In every situation, those two variables are operative. In any situation, you can either construct your engagement with the situation on what you're trying to get or what you can get. There's dramatic implications for all four of these things. Which one of these two you construct your intent on? I mean, if we look, for example, at the issue of security. Let's say I base my sense of security on anything that I get from the world, like a salary, or some assets, or a pension, or anything. If I base my security, my sense of security on what I get from the world, how often does the world that you're in give you exactly what you wanted at that particular point in time? Never. So if you're going to base your true. If you're going to base your sense of security on what you're getting from the world, you will never be secure, because the world is not designed to give you that which makes you comfortable.
But what if you are? What if you are getting? What if you think it's enough?
Well, basically, if you think that's enough, then you're not making that the issue. Do you understand?
If you're already secure.
That means, yeah. So in other words, I'm not making this issue. I can look at this because I don't need this. Right. So, in other words, if you base your sense of security on what you're getting from the world, fundamentally you'll stay insecure. For a very simple reason. Which one of these two things have you actually got power over? Because that's where your hand sits. So if you base your sense of security on what sits there, you will stay insecure. I mean, if you base your sense of security on the quality of what you're contributing in any situation that you're in, how often have you got control over the quality of what you're contributing in the situation that you're in? Always. So if you base your sense of security on the quality of what you're doing, you will always be secure. Which basically means to say, folks, that, I mean, the shocking kind of implication of this is that you can't get enough assets to scratch the itch called insecurity. It doesn't get scratched by stuff. And I mean, this has to be true. I mean, surely you've met really wealthy people in your life who are miserably insecure. I mean, how much is going to make it full? I mean, if you're sort of insecurity, sort of, I suppose the physiology of insecurity, you feel like a hole in the chest, because it's fearful. At what point have you actually got it full? When do you get enough stuff to make this hole go? It doesn't go away. In fact, the hole is bottomless. You can get all the assets in the world and they'll stay empty, because this hole called insecurity doesn't get filled by what comes from the world to you. It gets filled by what leaves you for the world. In fact, the asset that most dramatically sort of demonstrates this is ownership of a house. I mean, evidently, young Brits don't have this pleasure anymore. It's just completely inconceivable. But your parents' generation would have thought, you know what? If we've paid off the bankers, the title deed is in our own safe in Bedlam. We're secure. Like this asset, this house, this makes me secure. It's my bastion. Which is interesting, of course, because if you think about the idea of security as a brand, if something makes you secure, what does it promise to do for you? Something makes you secure, what will it do for you? It will keep you safe. Like your house is going to do that. Apart from keeping the rain off your head. I mean, if you get viciously assaulted, let's assume, Mahmoud, I mean, this is just thought experiment, right? Play, don't worry, don't have to. So the thought experiment, Mahmoud, is the following. You own your house. Your title deed is in your own safe. You get viciously assaulted by a thug in the park today. You're coming home, from work and out, you just get this person and they beat you to within an inch of your life. The most terrible assault. I mean, just broken those teeth, you cannot, blood, just torn shirt. You arrive at home, stumbling up your garden path to your house, which you own, by the way. The title deed is in your own shirt. I don't think your house is going to be outraged. I don't think your house is going to say, "Ma, who hit you?" No, I'll throw a brick at him. In other words, your idea that this thing's going to protect you is just nuts. Because if you think this thing's going to protect you, what you're trying to convince yourself of is that this pile of bricks has somehow accepted some kind of custodial responsibility with regard to you. It hasn't. You know, if there's a disaster aimed at you, it's not going to intervene. Yeah, you can't intervene as my human being then. You know? But you know the opposite is true. So let's assume you didn't get beaten up. Right. But it's still very upsetting what happened because Max and myself, we're kind of part of the neighboring gang, you see, and you've really upset us. But we notice you because you're a big guy, so we're not going to assault you. But when you're at work today, we get stuck into your house and we vandalize it like you cannot believe. You know, the most obscene graffiti on every surface we can put. We smash every window. Hey, Max, hey. What else? Red paint on the cement in every piece of plumbing we can find. We completely vandalize this poor man's house. He comes home this afternoon to this trashed home. Do you think Mahmoud will be cross when he comes home to a trashed home? So in other words, who's there to look after? Is Mahmoud there to look after the house, or is the house there to look after Mahmoud? Do you understand what this implies? Okay? Although not a single asset that you have has administered a custodial responsibility with regard to you. It won't intervene when there's a disaster aimed at you. You've accepted a custodial responsibility with regard to every one of your assets. You don't own yourself into being secure, folks. You own yourself into being insecure. The more things you own, the more things the barbarians can and will take away from you. Because absolutely everything you own is going to be owned by somebody else, and that probably a lot quicker than when you'd like. You know. So to think stuff, this is the layer of stuff that creates this bulwark of defense against the bigger the bull, it's like drinking salt water for thirst. The bigger the bulwark is, the more frightened you become. Because the more alienating your engagement with the world is. Because the more you're trying to stave the world off. It's no longer your ally, it's your enemy. The more stuff you put between you and the world, the more the world becomes your enemy. This issue of fulfillment doesn't require too much exploration because clearly it is exactly the same sort of basic criteria operate. I mean, if I base my happiness on what I'm getting from the world, because the world really gives me what I want at that particular point in time, I'll stay unhappy, I'll stay discontented. So when I look at the world from this point of view, I stay discontented. When I look at the world from this point of view, because I've always got control over that, I'll always be fulfilled. The issue of power. Do you have a watch? You're an accountant, you must have a watch. Can I see? No, don't give me the watch. In fact, you must not want to give me the watch. For this game to work, you must not. In fact, you must not want it. And not just that. I really do want the watch. Talk about making the poor man uncomfortable. So, if I want Mahmoud's watch, who can withhold the watch? If I want, so who's the power over who?
Well, he has the power over you because he can withhold it from you.
But isn't that interesting? When you want something from somebody else, that person's ability to withhold what you want makes them strong and you weak. It's universally true. It doesn't matter what it is that you want from the other person, as soon as you engage them on the basis of what sits here, you've just turned yourself into a victim. You've delivered yourself over to under their thumb. You're weak. Simply because which one of these two have you got power over? well, that's what you've got power over. So if you construct your engagement with the world on the basis of what sits here, you become powerful. And I mean, this is not just because my sort of very clumsy graphic just kind of suggests that. This is obviously true. You know, it's obviously true in any situation. I mean, this is why, for example, you cannot. How do you manipulate a suicide bomber? You don't manipulate a suicide bomber. You know? How do you manipulate somebody who's willing to lose everything now? You can't. That person manipulates you because you've still got something to lose. That's exactly why that tactic is such a powerful tactic, because it's completely unconditional. I mean, not just in dramatic things like suicide bombings. I mean, every trade in a market has the same logic built into it. I mean, if you think about how prices get set, so if you look at if you go to an auction, for example, that's when you'll see a price being set in front of your eyes. The price is going to go up, up, up. At some point, it gets stuck, gets set. You know, when does that happen? Basically, when somebody says, "I won't pay more." In other words, the person who can lose the transaction defines the value of the transaction. The person who can't lose the transaction is obviously still negotiable. So the transaction will define that. So in any situation, folks, the moment you engage the other on the basis of what sits over here, you've just turned yourself into a victim. In order to escape that nightmare of being played by the other, you have to be very deliberate about what you're willing to give or lose. The more you construct your engagement, the basis of what sits there, the more you account for a sense of autonomy with regard to the world around you, the more powerful you become. Finally, this issue of harmony is actually a refraction of the Mahmoud watch rule. So can we refer to it from now as the Mahmoud watch rule? It sounds really sexy, actually. Mahmoud watch rule. Very cool. The Mahmoud watch rule. So what we've already understood, Mahmoud, is that if I want your watch, your ability to hold the watch gives you power over me, right? And that makes you dangerous to me because you can manipulate me. I'm vulnerable to you. But now, let's assume that it's good to yes, please do that. Because I really do want to. and I come from the southern suburbs of Johannesburg. That means nothing to you now, but this is not nice. And I really, if you thought I was serious, I was trying to get the watch out. How would you, if you were in Mahmoud's shoes, you thought I was really trying to get something out of you, how would you feel about me? Scared. So in other words, why I want the watch from you, your ability to withhold the watch, makes you dangerous to me. But precisely because I'm trying to get something out of you, I'm dangerous to you. Simultaneously, you're dangerous to me and I'm dangerous to you. And if we're dangerous with regard to each other, what are you going to have? If two people are dangerous to each other, what are you going to have?
No harmony.
Well, not harmony, you're going to have conflict. You know? If I shift my intent in my engagement with Mahmoud from what I'm trying to get from him to I can be helpful to him, there's a number of things that happen simultaneously. The first thing, obviously, is that I slip out from underneath your ability to manipulate me. I become safe from you, because you've lost your power over me. But not only am I safe from you, but precisely because I'm trying to be helpful to you, you are safe from me. So in the same instance, I'm safe from you and you're safe from me. And when two people are fundamentally safe with regard to each other, what are you going to have? So can you see, folks, these four things of security, fulfillment, power, and harmony, you don't get at work. You take them to work. They're not the product of anything you do at work. They're product of something you do at night, at home. You manufacture these qualities inside your skin. So the core implication of this is that we really are supremely culpable for two things. For, first of all, what it feels like to be ourselves, what it feels like to be in our own skins, and second of all, for the world that we occupy. I mean, Alicia is, she's a very clever engineer, you know that. she's designing for us an instrument. This instrument is going to be called a What's It Like to Be in Your Skin monitor. It's a probe, Sandra. But don't worry, it goes in the ear. And how this probe works is it's got 4 calibrations. It's got an insecurity, security, discontent, 4 calibrations. And basically, if you own one, the idea is that to get a sense of what it feels like to be yourself, you kind of use it on a daily basis. You kind of like every night before you go to bed, you take a reading. What you don't know is that our clever engineer has built a chip in the back of this thing that speaks to the Internet of Things, that actually relays your reading through a central data bank. And also, because we're such magnanimous people, South Africans are wonderful people, isn't that very magnanimous? We're going to gift one of these What's It Like to Be in Your Skin monitors to every Londoner out there. Amazing. From our mag. But you don't realize it. Well, I mean, those poor souls don't realize that there's a hidden agenda that we want to see. We want to get the reading. So let's assume that we now hand every Londoner gets one, under the understanding that if you've got one, you've got to use it. You ask them on a daily basis, you've got to take a reading. But we collect the data. Still collects the data. So we get a spreadsheet on a day-by-day basis that gives us a sense of what it feels like to be in the average Londoner's skin. Where, doctor, would you suggest the average would lie? Insecurity, discomfort, weak, conflict, left or right? And who do you think they're blaming? Everyone else. I mean, pick your favorite sort of horror show. The spouse, the children, I come from the unions, the government, probably you come from 2 Brexit, I don't know. There's always, that chemical soup that produces the feeling inside you of being insecure, discontented, kind of vulnerable, at odds with, always angry. You manufacture that soup, it is your product, stop blaming them. Not only do you manufacture that soup, you actually manufacture the world that you're in, transaction by transaction. So another thought experiment. Let's say you deal with, there's, in a given day, person A. So me, Ebrahim, person A. I have 15 engagements with different people, 15 different engagements. And each time when I deal with a person, let's assume you're the first person, I deal with you, but my intent in dealing with you is to get something out of you. What's your prognosis? How's this going to end? Well, it's going to end in tears. So I move from you to you, I try to get something out of you. How does this end? It ends in tears. So I go through 15 transactions with other individuals that day, each one of them ends in tears. When I go to bed that night and I reflect on the world that I'm in, what's my comment about my world likely to be?
It's an unfriendly place.
This is a miserable place. They're all out to get me, quite legitimately, by the way. You are out there to get, you should be out to get me. I could have dealt with you on the basis of how I can be helpful to you. That turns into harmony. How can I be helpful to you? Harmony, harmony, harmony. All 15 engagements. When I go to bed that night, what's my comment about my world? This is the most amazing place. This place is populated by my benefactors and my allies. You manufacture the world you experience. Stop blaming them.
What if you blame yourself? If your meter is on the left, what if you blame yourself for your insecurity?
Well, that's a very good place to start. But as long as you're blaming yourself for the right things. You say, I feel miserable, and I now know that I feel miserable because I'm constructing my day-to-day engagement on this. Then you attempt to start constructing, and you will experience that incrementally you occupy a different world. A world which you don't experience as hostile. A world that you experience as increasingly friendly toward you. Now, the key thing you need to understand about this, folks, is that this is an incremental process. Because discovering this is not It's not black magic. I mean, it's kind of part of the natural maturation process. So I mean, let's consider maturity. In your view, what's the difference between an immature person and a mature person? Just fire off the head. So we're gossiping about something. She's so immature, or he's so immature. What would you, if I said, what do you mean, Sandra? Why do you say she's immature? What would you say?
Naive.
Naive. And therefore mature by contrast with me? Wise. That's a good one. Insightful maybe?
Selfish.
Selfish. Mature would be?
Selfless.
Selfless.
Understanding.
Understanding.
Understanding of the world and other people around.
Is that an immature person is understanding?
Immature.
Which is, immature person would be not understanding.
Lacking in
We're lacking in
empathy.
empathy. Right. Emotional, rational. I didn't hear that.
Active temptation, like getting angry too.
Oh, right, okay. Right. Emotional and temperamental almost. Yeah. Right. Add some.
Responsibility.
Irresponsible and responsible, I think that's true. It's so
Discipline, indiscipline.
that consistent and duty that you know. So is there a category which would carry all of these that you've described now? Is there a single coat hanger? Well, can I try and give you one? That's very kind. Thank you. So we're trying to account for maturation. Huh? Is it fair to say that maturation is a process?
Yes.
Well, if we describe it as a process, let's understand what that means. If something is a process, you know, a metabolic process, an administrative process, and kind of a production process. If you're using the word process to describe something, what are you saying about the thing you're describing? There's a beginning and an end. There's a beginning in it, absolutely right. And the other thing? Takes time. It's incremental. In other words, any process is an incremental move from the beginning to an end. Which basically means to say, the process of maturation starts somewhere and ends somewhere and is an incremental move from the beginning to the end. At what point does the process start? I mean, logically, what's on the extreme left-hand side? Birth. Therefore, and clearly this is the direction. I mean, we're not confused about that. I mean, it doesn't. Now, folks, I mean, it sounds innocuous, but I mean, from the point of view of intent, this is very significant. Because in terms of the issue of intent, these two moments of birth and death are the only truly unconditional moments that you face in your life. Surely at birth, the infant has had nothing yet. So whatever the infant is going to get, the infant will still get. Which means, at birth, the infant is yet to get unconditionally. Can you take anything with you when you die?
No.
So you die, you don't get anything, you give everything. But I mean, surely I can challenge that. I say, nonsense, when I die, I don't give anything. Everything gets taken away from me. So what's the difference?
Interpretation.
Interpretation or intent. Yeah, it's exactly that. So Jaffrey has 500 pounds. 1,000 pounds would sound like that's like scary. And your neighbor Yasser, no, you had 500 because you beat us at that, you know what it's like. So as you leave this afternoon, you had 500 pounds in your wallet, you open the door. They stolen your 500 pounds. Yasser, you've got 500. Your friend Nick has, I mean, you know, his business is struggling. And he's actually trying to buy that boat in production. And the problem is that he's got himself sort of up in debt up to his eyeballs, and he can't make the bond payment on this boat in the canal. So you, it's terrible. You go to him and you tell the story. You know, and he just said, "Please, I mean, I need 500 pounds, otherwise I'm going to lose my home You know, no, you're a kind man. You've got to play with now, really. So out of the kindness of your heart, you give Nick £500 to save the boat. Is there a difference between what happened to Jafri and what happened to Yasser? And then where does that difference sit? Is it in the £500? No, it's in the intent of the person who's going through the experience. So folks, I mean, what that suggests is that the difference between giving something and having it taken from you doesn't sit in the objective event. I mean, it sits in the intent of the person who's going through the experience. And if we view the loss of the £500 from the, as completely inevitable, it's like death, it's definitely going to happen. Whose experience of the loss of the £500 can you describe as the successful experience? Yes, you understand? So by definition, I mean, it's hardwired in the context. You don't even have to get speculative about this. By definition, the process of maturation is concerned with the process of the maturation of intent to give unconditionally. If you cut your intent down to a clinical kind of distinction in any situation, if I want to get a sense of autonomy over my life and not feel like I'm being buffeted around by things that I don't have control over, then I've got to give attention to what I've got control over. And what I've got control over in any situation is what I contribute. If I root my sense of my satisfaction, my happiness, I build my intent around what I can contribute, then it becomes easier for me to just have a far more comfortable ride being human. But if I build, now it doesn't matter what that contribution is. I mean, maybe that contribution is coming to the defense of the oppressed. That's the contribution I'm making. You know? My fundamental intent is to give. But if my fundamental intent is to pursue my own aggrandizement, get lots of assets, then in fact, it's like drinking salt water for thirst. I never get the thing that I want. No. And the other thing is that what makes this complex is that it's an incremental process. Because, I mean, nobody's absolutely crystal clear about what they should contribute in a given situation. So if we look at this process because we said, what is process? It's an incremental move from a beginning to an end. And if we see it from that point of view, let's use a metaphor of shade. I mean, if that's absolute dark and that's absolute light, then what you have between the two is various shades of grey, And what changes then as you mature is, if you like, there's a change in the proportion of the mix of your intent. So let's say, I mean, this is absolute darkness, that's absolute light, and what you have as you mature, if that's the dark piece of my intent, that's the light piece, then clearly at any given point we're always a mixed motive. But if I'm comparatively immature, left there more frequently than not, I'll give attention to what sits over here. When I'm comparatively mature, then more frequently than not, I'll give attention to what sits over there. And the engine to the whole thing is in fact failure. So I take a strategy for contentment in the world. It gets brought to fail because I'm basing the contentment on an outcome. And the degree to which I do that, I become more process-focused, look at what I'm giving rather than what I'm getting, and that's a step-by-step thing. And then it becomes clearer and clearer to me what the source of my happiness is, the source of my contentment is.
What about people seeking, talk about the world, what about people seeking the truth, absolute truth, or seeking knowledge? Rabbi is the name of God, increasingly knowledge.
When you look at the world from this point of view, you set up, in other words, what you're trying to get. You set up an experience of the world where the interests of the other and the interests of the self are discontinuous. In other words, others hostile. There's a boundary between self and other. To act in your interest is to act contrary to my interest. The more mature I become, the more I act on the basis of this, I start to recognize that there's a continuity that connects your interest and my interest, and that is the truth. That when I'm acting in your interest, I'm actually acting in my highest interest. I start to experience that you and I aren't separate. I start to experience that you and I are the same. So there's a moral path, it's a legitimate path, to realizing your connectedness with all things, your connectedness with all life. And that is to, in every situation, to the best of your ability, endeavor to act in the best interest of the other.
The other being yourself.
that which gets presented to you in the window of perception in the situation that you're in. So we have the effect on how your attention operates of this intent thing is that there's a difference between what you could call predatory attention and receptive attention. And it's born in the distinction between these two phrases. Is there a difference in your experience of these two phrases? He's looking at me, or he's listening to me? Does it feel different?
Yeah.
Which one feels pleasant? Listening. Why does looking feel comparatively unpleasant?
It's getting versus giving.
Is that true? But why is it if you say he's looking at me, you almost want to, why does it feel unpleasant?
There's an unsaid, maybe suspiciousness there.
Fear of being judged.
Yeah.
That's true also, yeah. In other words, it's like he's penetrating me. He's like, he's wanting to come into me. He wants to take something from me. Whereas if he's listening to me, he's not trying to get something from me. He's allowing me into him. When your intent is to take, your attention operates in a predatory way. And that's why the world that you occupy becomes hostile to you. When your intent is to give, your attention starts to operate in a receptive way. And amazingly, you discover that the world gives you more than what you could want for yourself. It becomes your ally and your benefactor.
Wouldn't that inspire you to have a false attention giving in the hope that you get?
Yes. So if one looks at this process, it almost goes through, and this might actually partly address your concern, but there are epochs. I mean, clearly the fundamental epoch is the difference between immature and mature. Up to 50% if you want darkness in the shade, and beyond 50%, 51% light in the shade. If you see it from that point of view, it means that you can actually, you can cut these epochs finer and finer. You say, well, what happens if you look at it up to say 25% darkness in the shade? Up to 50% darkness. What happens if you have 75% darkness in the shade? Each one of those kind of ways of being have a different framing, linguistic framing. So this person who's fundamentally here to get says to the world, I am here to get. This person would say, I'm willing to give, but I give to get. This person would say, unconditionally, I am here to give. What would this person say? I get to give. Each one of these patterns of intent carry with them their own baggage and dysfunction, which forces a move for your intent to go forward. When the brat, this way of being, I'm here to get, the person that is most true for is an infant. And when the infant suffers discomfort at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's not a negotiating matter. There's no place where you are there to fix me. And because you're angelic parents, you'll tolerate this for a while, until maybe 3 years old. And when he's just done it one last time. It's like, enough now! 3 o'clock one morning, and the real monster emerges from the stalks the crib, grabs him by the chest. We're Africans, we do this. Pins into the wall and says, if you ever wake me up at 3 o'clock, I will beat you to within an inch of your life. And suddenly you go, you can't take from these people all the time, they get cross with you. You better be nice to them to get out of what you want. So there's a birth of a whole new way of looking at things. You have to be nice, you have to give to get. Initially it's very charming, like a young child, but it eventually becomes like this game playing of the adolescent. It's very competitive, always turns everything into a win-lose outcome. It's just like a war. how much am I getting for what I'm getting? How much am I getting for what I'm getting? You know? And that eventually becomes unsustainable because you see what that competitiveness of the adolescent doesn't recognize is that anything that's based on win-lose becomes lose-lose, necessarily so. So, I mean, if you're very competitive, if I want to dominate you all, why do you think I'll be doing that? What do I want from you by beating you? I want you to think I'm special. I want you to make me significant. I want you, so that's why I'm dominating you. But what do you have to do for me to win? What do you have to lose? So I want you to make me special by making you unspecial. Now, what kind of logic is this? Do you understand? You're actually literally getting the opposite of what you want. You don't get the adulation and the love and the affirmation by having this way of structuring your intent. What you get is absolute hatred. I mean, there's nothing that people dislike more. So eventually you understand in your later adolescence that this has to stop. The competition has to stop because it's a fight I can't win. I've got to find a brokered I've got to actually be willing to go the extra mile. I've got to really put in a bit more than what I'm getting. So this kind of then introduces you to this real horror show called adulthood, where you now have duties and responsibilities, and you have, I'm not being cynical about it, but you kind of have a partner from the car, the 3 fat kids in the back, the picket fence, and you get the picture. And you've got lots of duties, and that's good because they told you when you were this kind of dope smoking adolescent, you can't just be happy on your own. No. You're only allowed to be happy, you make everybody else happy. And you buy this unbelievably kind of challenging thing. Yes, you take on the duties. I go and get on the sweat of my brow. I will go and get what I will get, not for me, it's for them. I'm getting to give. Can I finish the story? Sure. Yeah. Now, what people, and the problem is our culture sort of tends to retard these experiences. So that's why we have to live unseemly long ages in this age, because we don't learn our lessons. So we're going to hang about the wrong side of the grave. So, But at some time, you're going to recognize. You'll have the equivalent of the following. So in my culture, where I come from, so let's call him Fred. Fred's late 40s, early 50s. He's wrecked himself in the pursuit of being the good father. He's got a bit of a paunch, grey pallor, stoop. That's the last time you saw Fred. This time you walk past Fred and that's Fred. He's changed. He's lost 20 kilos. He's sitting on a Harley Davidson. He's got a blonde 21-year-old in his knee. He's got pony's a bit thin, but it's there. You say, Fred, what's happened to you? And then you'll hear the story about how he had to take his life back. How they used it. He'll say to you, one morning, I swung my legs, my hairy, varicose legs, off the bed and I looked past this paunch, you see. And I turned around and I looked at that one that I spent the last 25 years in the traces with. And I started to think, before I looked like this, when I looked like something still, they said to me, unless I work to make them all happy, I'm not going to be happy. And I bought the agenda. And I've done this to my health for them. I've sired 3 in this liaison. The oldest is now sitting in Papua New Guinea with a bone through his nose. The second eldest is the one I like the least, has become an accountant. So the youngest is oscillating between the backyard where he's smoking a joint and the couch where he's watching TV. He's 24 and he hasn't done a day's work in his life. In fact, he's not even gone to university. And they said to me, if I serve the milk, I'll be happy. I'm not happy. I'm deeply, deeply alienated and miserable. I can't remember when last that person and myself had anything to do with it. It was just a horrible thought. We were both much too overweight. Never mind. It was just awful. So we get the sense of having been sucked dry to provide. And the tragedy in our culture that the very legitimate kind of rebellion that you go into gets aimed at the world. You honestly think that if you replace her with somebody else, it's going to get better? Ha! You know, in fact, I know people who have done the same thing, iterated the same thing 4 times. It doesn't get better, it gets worse because you're scratching in the wrong place. How about trying the possibility of doing what you do unconditionally without concern about the outcome? That's this. I'm here to give unconditionally. I'm here to do what I can unconditionally. And so in other words, you can describe the intent of somebody from there to there as an emptiness that seeks to be filled. I'm always trying to fix something. But then you start to realize, hold on, I don't have to be an emptiness that seeks to be filled. I can be a fullness that spontaneously empties. And that's this way of being. And all of our lives are actually aimed at that trajectory, and all of the crises that we face in our lives are the incremental stepping stones to make that way of being possible. The key joy of this way of being is that you truly experience the oneness that we claim is there. Because you experience that, like my liver doesn't exist for itself, it exists for the rest of my body. You know, it's not there to get any, it's there to give something. So I exist as an intimate part of all of that. I don't have to concern myself with what it gives me, because that's not my problem, that's its problem. My problem is what I give it. And the more I make that unconditionally my problem, the more I'm in the embrace, in the kind of warm, accepted embrace, like my liver is in the embrace of the rest of my being. And that's that experience is your birthright. Alhamdulillah. Thank you for your patience with me.
Can we ask questions?
Yes, you may. I have a feeling I've just assaulted somebody with the kind of...
You've been giving this last hour, and we've been taking.
No.
Well, yes, we've been taking your knowledge and your enthusiasm and your wisdom.
So the key question to ask you, do you mind if I pick this up? Because it's an important, is that all right? Can I just pursue this now? Is there a difference between taking and receiving? There's a fundamental difference between taking and receiving.
It's the listening
Yeah. The problem is that when you construct your intent on what you want to take, the other is programmed to withhold what you want. When you construct your intent on what is appropriate for you to give in the situation that you're in, the other will spontaneously give you what you require. You will receive it, you won't need to take it. And so I didn't experience you as taking from me. I experienced you as having the courtesy to grant me your attention, to make me possible. I received your attention. It was a wholesome transaction. You know, and if that wholesomeness wasn't there, I would have had the experience of hell, I'm having to work really hard with these people. You know, just have to keep on intimidating somebody just to keep. I had to do a little bit of that. I'm the fall guy.
If the object.
Sorry, I mean that lady. I beg your pardon. Yeah.
I was just wondering about, you said I'm free to give, maybe I just missed some point, but sometimes, let's say time, right, time is the most, I think, important to give. So sometimes if you give your time without any planning, then you may miss out some greater contribution you may give later on by keeping that time productive. Like in Quran, it says like keep sadaqah but don't give it all. So how do you keep balance? Like even the family kind of maybe distraction. So is it family for them? It's okay to give unconditionally, and for the foreigner, how we do this distinction?
Yes.
How we draw the line?
Well, that when you most adults are basically needing to do what you're doing, and that is really this epoch of your life where you're trying to. The problem with that part is trying to maintain balance, because it's all about duty. You know. The unfortunate thing about people who've gone beyond this is that they're kind of outside of the cage. I mean, you can't It's no longer about balance. And why? Because they are, all of their action is rooted in the insight of the proximity of death. It's like every action is like the last action. I mean, clearly, at the end of this process, we're all going to write an exam, the grave. In this exam, they only ask you one question. Are you able to lose absolutely everything unconditionally right now? And you either pass or fail the exam, you know? Now, once the person has gone beyond this, in other words, they're no longer concerned with the future. You know, it's no longer about feeding the kids and so on. I mean, that's an appropriate place, but you've gone beyond that. Every act that you do is an act done in the face of death. Every act that you do is no longer about guaranteeing outcomes. It's about, if this is my last thing that I do, what did I do?
Maybe very, like, a good example, but for example, for the children, like, they need your time, right?
Yes.
So, it's like, I mean, still you need to think, I think, even if you think about the moment,
Yeah.
I think the future of the children is overcoming, because it's, I
There's
think, more important
yeah.
than now.
There's no question about it.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. But at some point, they'll all be out the house. You'll have 3 teeth left. And a cigarette. Well, I will. And I'm kind of alone. And then what floats my boat isn't so much what's going to be good for the kids. So there's one has to understand how extreme this state of being actually is. This is the state of being of people who are no longer socially useful. So it's really about maturity as opposed to adulthood. This is about adulthood, this is about maturity. And you know, what's interesting about people who are there is that very often we experience them as completely dysfunctional because they really don't give a damn. They don't want to get anything. They want nothing, not even your good opinion. So you know, so I want to go back to your watch. I made a big noise about your. Yeah. Okay. So now finally going to take it on. Let's assume I'm good. The only reason why I was interacting with you was to get the watch, and I've now got the watch. Can you still manipulate it? No. Now let's assume I don't want the watch. I want something else. I want you to think I'm a really nice person, which, by the way, I am. Very nice. I want your good opinion of me. Can I ever get control over your good opinion of me like I can get control over the watch? So in other words, I want something I can never get. So you're far more manipulable on the basis of your desire to be liked than you are on the basis of your desire for things. You know, if you like, what people are really coming to terms with in this epoch is this problem of significance. And you'll see that in older people. So you meet, you know, your favorite uncle, whatever you call him. Ahmad. But he's kind of like a slovenly eater, as they get, because there's not enough teeth, so some of the egg is on the chest, you know. And you go, it's a bit distasteful. I mean, I did that to you the other day. So, yeah, so you say to him, Uncle Ahmad, what? Huh? There's egg in your shirt, Uncle Ahmad. I can't see the egg in my shirt. Don't make your problem my problem. Do you understand? There's like a crazy sort of irrationality to really sort of elderly people. We think it's dysfunctional, but it's not at all. They're just calling you out on the silliness of your criteria. Yeah, but please, ma'am. And then you.
I just have a question about your categorizing it with maturity according to wage. Because with the category you put up there, it's suggesting that when death comes closer to you, you're at an older age, therefore you come to that realization at an older age. So you're saying as an adolescent or as an adult, a young adult, you can't reach that?
No, I'm not suggesting that. So these things, these descriptions are broadly descriptions of epochs, but they're not. This isn't the same order of things as the volume of a kilogram of water at sea level, because there are epochs. They're generally true. At any given point, though, we are fundamentally dealing with two variables. So with this is up to, we said 25% darkness in the shade. It's an average. It's entirely possible for the person to be dealing with death. Asks, you can do that as a child. You could engage it like that. You can engage it from that point of view as an adolescent, because those are the fundamental kind of variables that are operating on an ongoing basis. But if you think about what does the architecture of a person, or the being of a person looks like, who fundamentally is only there to take, then broadly that epoch will be described as this kind of the demanding sort of young Napoleon of the 2-year-old, you know. There's no thought that I'm there to give anything at all, they're there to give to me. And also, the other thing is that some people are better at this than others. I mean, so some of us go through this process quicker than others. And some of us get stuck in epochs. So you must admit, competition junkies who are like 50 years old. In the corporate world, you get them all the time. You know, so basically, the guy's an adolescent in an adult's body. So, yeah.
Sorry.
Please.
Could you say that maybe when you have awareness of the higher power that's giving, so you're not trying to get from the world, rather you're receiving from the higher
That's
power.
exactly right.
If you're receiving that, if you're having that understanding at a younger age, is that, like you're saying, that's the final, like that's possible at a younger age?
It is, and it is that conviction that I don't have to look after my interests. I don't have to manage the world to produce outcomes that are going to suit me, because that world is orchestrated by an ingenuity that's bigger than mine. And it orchestrates in my interest. There is a creator in charge, and he's my ally and my benefactor. It's that conviction that makes this journey a lot easier. You lose fewer teeth in the process. You'll still lose some, but you won't get as many hard knocks. You'll be able to go through it more eloquently. You were going to say something?
Yes. Thank you for the talk.
Pleasure.
It was actually a two-part question, one which was answered by your answer to the lady over there. So you can achieve, presumably, this state sooner in life.
Mm-hmm.
And the second part of it was you said something about a person not being socially useful and achieving that state. Can you not be socially useful and have that state of being there to give and not worrying?
Yeah, but I mean, you know,
getting.
remember that we're dealing with a very broad brush. Okay, so we're painting large pictures, and it's a caricature. And by definition, if you do caricature, you are doing violence to the truth. This person may still be very useful to others, but they're completely content with the idea of not being useful. They don't do things to be useful. Right. This person does things to be useful, to make the world a better place. So it's again, it's how your intent gets constructed. It's not about the effect on the world.
Oh, okay.
Right. So it comes back to the question you had. This thing is not about groups and the world out there. It's about the architecture of what happens behind your eye. Yes, Mahmoud. Sorry, I do.
If your intent is directed not at people but at material things, so if you want to build a house and you're looking at the world and you're looking at bricks and so on, is it still possible to both give and get? So how do you give in relation to material things?
Intention. Yeah, that's fine. Well, so there's consistent with a shift of intent from taking to giving is a shift of attention from outcome to process. Does that make sense? So two people are walking up the hill. And you can't interrogate what's happening behind their eyes, so you don't yet know their intent, and therefore because intent and attention are obviously parallel issues, because what's important is where you'll put your attention. All that you can say of the person as he's walking up the hill is he's walking up the hill. Once you get behind the person's eyes, That person can be walking up the hill in one of two ways. He can either be walking in order to get to the top of the hill. So the process is in order to produce an outcome. And that's when he's trying to get. If you said actually he's walking and he takes pleasure out of the walking, then the top of the hill is his means to walk well. There's a shift of what's significant from the outcome into the process. In other words, he doesn't build the house to make useful things to others. He takes pleasure out of building. So all virtuosity, all doing things to do them well. In fact, all of the sunnah is about this quality. When you're using this verb properly, according to, I mean, there's no, okay, maybe your breath doesn't stink as badly, but I mean, that's not really why you're doing it. I mean, there's a sense of doing the thing to do it well, not just for the outcome of the teeth. And so the more you ritualize your life, in a sense, the more you sacralize your life, the more you create the conditions where whatever you do, the doing of it is the significant piece and not the outcome. So the further along this continuum you are, the more you do things to do them well, not just to achieve results. So a person would trade, for example. One person trades. There's a wonderful story that Shaykh Ebrahim once quoted of. He used to work for an antique dealer in, I think in Naples. It was in after the war, in an Italian city. And I can tell you what the antique dealer's name was. The man's name was Signor Rossini. And this Mr. Rossini used to be a very good antique dealer. One day, this American tourist walks into the shop and picks out a statue that she wanted to buy. And she asks Signor Rossini, how much do you want for this statue? And he gives her a number of dollars there. And she's fine, she takes out an American Express and she wants to pay for this. And the man gets furious. He's red in the face, chases the woman out of his shop. At which point, young Shaykh Ebrahim, who was a kid at that stage, was helping in the shop, was completely bemused. So he said, Mr. Rossini, why did you chase this lady out the store? He said, listen, I mean, I'm not in this game just to make money. I'm in this game to enjoy the sale. And if someone's not going to haggle with me, I'm not going to sell them anything. I mean, I really do know people who trade like that. And when they trade like that, they're really good traders. Because there's a thrill in the process. It's not just about the money you get. You can live your whole life like that.